How did one of the earliest great ceremonial centers of ancient Mesoamerica rise from low, flood-prone wetlands, built not of towering stone but of carefully shaped earth? Venta rests within the humid Gulf Coast plain, where rivers wind slowly through dense vegetation and the ground feels soft beneath every step. The air is heavy. Insects hum in the distance, seasonal rains swell nearby waterways, and shallow lagoons reflect wide skies. The land here is flat, almost level with the horizon. At first glance, nothing suggests monumentality. There are no mountains to dominate the view, no natural hills rising above the marsh. And yet, emerging gently from this low terrain, broad earthen platforms begin to appear. They do not rise sharply. They lift slowly from the ground, shaped and smoothed with intention. From above, the design becomes clear. Venta was arranged along a deliberate north-south axis. Large platforms anchor its center. Open plazas stretch between elevated spaces. At its heart once stood a massive earthen mound, rising higher than anything around it. This was not a random accumulation of soil. It was formed, aligned, and reshaped over time. Stone was scarce in this region. Instead of carving mountains, the builders moved earth. Basket after basket of clay and sediment was gathered, layered, and compacted. The wetland itself was transformed into stable ground. Water defined everything. Rivers provided transportation and access to distant regions. Seasonal floods enriched surrounding soil but also threatened to reclaim the land. Elevation was survival. The platforms of Venta lifted ceremonial space above shifting water. What makes this place more remarkable is its age. It flourished long before many later stone cities of Mesoamerica. Its layout suggests early experimentation with large-scale planning and symbolic design. No written accounts survive from its beginnings. The site speaks through its geometry, its orientation, and the objects buried within its soil. And so the question settles across these quiet earthen mounds. Why did one of the region's earliest major centers take shape here, in a landscape shaped constantly by water? To understand how Venta functioned, the surrounding waterways must be seen as extensions of the city itself. This region is shaped by rivers that branch, curve, and reconnect across low plains. During rainy seasons, water spreads outward, filling marshes and lagoons. In drier months, the land firms and travel becomes easier. Movement here has always followed the rhythm of water. Venta stood slightly elevated within this shifting terrain. Its placement allowed access to trade routes along rivers while remaining high enough to avoid frequent flooding. Canoes could travel through connected waterways, linking the site to distant coastal and inland regions. From this lowland position, exchange was possible in many directions. Within the ceremonial core, space was carefully organized. Platforms form rectangular arrangements around broad plazas. The central mound once rose as a dominant focal point, aligned with the overall axis of the complex. Smaller mounds and courtyards appear at measured distances, reinforcing a consistent plan. Buried deep beneath some of these platforms, carefully arranged offerings have been discovered. Layers of colored clay, stone mosaics, and carved objects were placed below the surface before new construction covered them. These hidden deposits suggest deliberate acts of renewal, architecture layered over memory. Even without tall stone pyramids, the scale of earth moved here is striking. Thousands of tons of soil were transported and shaped. The ground itself became architecture. Materials found at Venta reveal wide connections. Basalt from distant mountains was brought here and carved into large monuments. Jade and other valuable stones traveled from far away. These objects indicate networks that stretched across much of Mesoamerica. Yet despite its ceremonial grandeur, Venta does not appear chaotic. The layout is controlled and repeated. Structures align along the same north-south orientation. Open spaces are preserved between platforms. The design feels intentional, not accidental. In such a wet environment, maintenance would have been constant. Surfaces had to be repaired after storms, edges reshaped after erosion, platforms reinforced against settling. The city depended on renewal. But this raises deeper questions. How did such large-scale coordination begin so early in the region's history? And what sustained it across generations in a landscape that was always shifting? The Earth holds the outline, but not the origin. As Venta continued to grow, its ceremonial landscape became more defined. The central mound dominated the northern end of the complex, rising above surrounding platforms in a carefully shaped form. From a distance, it would have appeared as a man-made hill emerging from flat wetlands, a landmark visible across low terrain. Around it, plazas created open spaces framed by earthen structures. These plazas were not empty gaps. They were deliberate voids within the design, allowing movement, gathering, and clear sightlines along the north-south axis. Standing within one of these open areas, the alignment of platforms becomes unmistakable. The entire complex feels oriented toward something beyond immediate surroundings. Buried features add to the site's mystery. Deep beneath certain plazas lie intricate arrangements of colored clay and stone mosaics, laid out in geometric patterns before being covered again. These were not meant for constant viewing. They were sealed beneath later construction, suggesting cycles of dedication and renewal embedded within the ground itself. Large stone monuments also mark Venta's significance. Massive basalt blocks were transported from distant highlands and carved with expressive forms. Their presence in a region without local stone speaks to extensive networks and long-distance movement. Yet these monuments are integrated into the earthen architecture rather than overwhelming it. Despite its ceremonial scale, Venta does not show clear evidence of dense residential quarters within the central complex. Living areas likely extended outward into surrounding wetlands beyond the core platforms. The center appears designed primarily for gathering and ritual activity rather than daily habitation. Over time, additions followed established alignments. New layers of earth reinforced older structures. Platforms were reshaped without abandoning the original plan. The city evolved through continuity, yet subtle changes appear in later phases. Some monuments were intentionally buried. Certain areas were reconfigured. Construction patterns shift slightly. These adjustments are quiet but meaningful. They suggest that the purpose of Venta was being reconsidered, even while its physical form remained largely intact. In its later centuries, Venta began to change in ways that were measured rather than abrupt. There is no clear evidence of sudden destruction across the entire site. Instead, construction slowed. Some monuments were deliberately buried. Certain plazas were reshaped or partially filled. The steady rhythm of renewal appears to have weakened. In a landscape defined by water and sediment, time moves quietly but persistently. Without constant maintenance, earthen edges soften, rain smooths slopes, floods reshape low ground. The platforms that once rose clearly above wetlands gradually blend back into surrounding soil. The very material that allowed Venta to flourish also made it vulnerable to erosion. Environmental shifts may have played a role. Changes in river courses could have altered access routes. Variations in rainfall might have affected agricultural productivity in nearby areas. In a setting where elevation was carefully balanced against flood risk, even subtle changes in water patterns would have mattered. Regional dynamics also appear to have shifted. Other centers emerged elsewhere in Mesoamerica. Exchange networks may have redirected. The wide connections that once brought stone and jade to Venta may have thinned over time. The decline does not appear dramatic. It appears gradual. As renewal slowed, platforms were left unrepaired. Monuments remained partially buried. Plazas filled slowly with sediment. The ceremonial core that once stood elevated above wetlands became less distinct. Eventually, Venta was absorbed into the landscape that had shaped it. Today, the broad outlines of its platforms still rise from the Gulf Coast plain. The central mound remains visible, though softened by centuries of weather. From above, the north-south alignment is still clear. The geometry endures, even after layers of soil and vegetation have reclaimed much of its surface. And so the original question returns: why did one of the earliest major ceremonial centers take shape in such a low, shifting landscape? The remains suggest answers rooted in water access, long-distance exchange, and early experimentation with urban planning. They also reveal how fragile Earth-built cities can be when renewal fades. Venta persists as a quiet memory in clay and sediment, a place where the ground itself became architecture. If this exploration of Venta has stayed with you, you may wish to continue discovering these early ancient landscapes with us. And what do you think inspired builders to shape monumental space from Earth alone?